All right. Again, welcome to Estimating 2. The purpose of this lecture is really to get us involved and empower with an introduction to what we really want to do and what estimating means. And I also intend to talk a bit about ethics in estimating, which I believe is an extremely important topic. So stay tuned, and these are the type of things that we're going to cover for today's class. Now, before we do that, let me very briefly tell you what I told you last time. That our semester is divided into three parts. The first part is basically where we talk about productivity, labor product, and the fundamentals of cost estimating. And then the second part is where we start putting together information and practices about the use of technology in estimating. And then the third part is when we develop the soft skills like conceptual estimating, assembly estimating, general conditions, and indirect costs and things like that. We're going to have a semester project. That's the CAT bus project. Again, stay tuned for more information about that project. I have talked to our folks at RS Means, and they have agreed to give us the full version of their database. What happens is that I'm going to ask Arup to distribute those accounts to you guys, and what happens is that you're going to receive an email from him or from RS Means for that matter with a username and password. But to my knowledge, the username is going to be your g.clemson email. So if you have any problems with logging onto your RS Means account, please bring it to my attention. We're going to talk about that again first thing on Wednesday. And also about the on-screen takeoff, I have the activation codes. I'm going to supply them to you guys. And again, the expectation is to get that software up and running before we get to the second part of the semester. One more time, on-screen takeoff does not like Mac, so one thing to consider. Now let's look at our today's lecture. What we're going to do is that we're going to first look at the organization of our estimating package. What is it that we're trying to do? First thing, and really maybe foremost, is to develop a plan for the completion of estimate. Guys, estimating for a normal commercial let's say $10 million project is an activity, is a series of activities. It takes probably about 2 to 3 weeks with 2 to 3 people involved in the process. So like any other projects, although it's not a huge project, but you have to have a schedule, you have to have a timeline all put together if you want to nail the correct timing and get everything done on time. So that's extremely important. That's the first thing that we're going to focus on for this piece. And the second thing is that as you are working on different pieces of your estimating package or a given project, it's very likely that the owner or the architect would supply new series of files, new set of files. And what happens is that chances are that you have duplicates or versions of a set of drawings. So it's very important to maintain an up-to-date package and data if you don't want to get all that messed up. And lastly, I can't emphasize this more, and we are definitely going to practice that in class, but our goal is not to solely and simply produce something. It would have to be neat, clear, and easy to follow. So as I normally say, and I probably will say that again, your estimating work must be readable and understandable without you attached to it. In other words, you can't be there, and when I look at your work and someone else is looking at your work, and that work should be self-explanatory. So keep that in mind. Now that is an example of like a mini schedule for an estimating project, but very important. When will this be finished? Look at this, submit bid. This is normally a hard date. This is something that the owner would specify, and you really don't have any control over it. So you probably will actually put that in there as a milestone. Um, and everything else that is going to be done here is going to be really in order to achieve that milestone. And also, what's very important, especially for bigger projects that more than one person is involved, now you're going to address this question too: who is responsible in doing what? So these are the two things. For example, for your semester project, teams of three, one, two, and three, you have to be able to do this. You have to be able to divide and conquer, meaning that uh, responsibilities should be clear as to who is doing what. Now, with that said, let's look at the number and different types of files that we're going to have. You have something that we call an estimating notebook. In that notebook, you're going to have workup sheets, you're going to have summary sheets. Again, we are going to practice these. We're going to talk about all of these really one by one in class. And then you're going to have an errors and omissions sheet, especially if you are going to have proposals, materials and suppliers information, subcontractors quotations, and stuff like that. You're going to have to maintain a good record of your notes. And one thing that's very, very important, and let me actually put that in words here, is that you are going to have a list of your assumptions and clarifications. What that means is that throughout that work that you're going to put together, and again for CAT bus project you're going to do that, you're making assumptions from time to time. You have to make assumptions, and it's imperative that you keep record of those assumptions, especially if at a later day, if you're back to your work, it must be clear what you've done, to what end, and things like that. It's very, very, very important. This list is going to be part of what you turn in eventually for your semester project. So kind of keep an eye out on it. We're going to talk more about it when the time comes. Very important, maybe the most important question that you should ask yourself is that whether for a given project, whether do I want to bid or do I not want to bid? Do I want to participate in this project or no? And these are a number of determinants, parameters that you have to look at. For example, type of construction. If your specialty is in vertical construction, you probably don't want to place a bid for a horizontal construction, right? Location. If it's outside of your comfort zone and a region that you're most familiar with, for example, if you are a general contractor whose majority of work is done in the southeast of the United States, you don't want to go to North Dakota for work. It's not because you can't do it, it's because you're not familiar enough with what's going on there and what kind of weather conditions you have to consider. Do you know people there? Stuff like that. A lot of soft skill managerial things that you have to have. Size of the project, bonding capacity. So you as a company, you are going to have bonding capacity, right? Now, depending on how much work in progress, which is another item in the list, you may or may not have free bonding capacity. If you don't have such capacity, just stop placing bids, right? Another item is architect, engineer, or the owner. So if you, and again, by no means am I promoting for adversarial relationships, but if you don't have a good relationship with an architect and you see their names in the bid manual, in big documents, I would not recommend participating in that project because it's going to be all the same headaches over and over again. So let's probably not do that. So things like that. And the second thing I want to say Guys, in order for us to create the estimate, certain steps must be taken. And actually, bear with me one by one, because that's exactly the type of things that we're going to do for our semester project. First and foremost, we are going to check drawings and project manual very thoroughly, every aspect of it, because that's the bread and butter. That's the stuff that you are going to use when you put your bidding and estimating package together. You have to get a feel for the project. Look at different things. You look and see if there's any anomaly, if there is any particular unusual feature on that project, if it's normal type of standard project, or there are things that you have to have a special consideration, if there are any long lead items and stuff like that. You better have an understanding about all of those before you even begin working on that estimating package. These are the absolute necessary steps you have to take before getting involved into calculations, quant takeoff, so forth and so on. Now, number four, definitely review all the wall sections, type of material, types of assembly. Big picture, what kinds of approaches you really need to take in order to build this building. Is that something that you've done in the past? Things like that, very, very important. Structural drawings, mechanical drawings. So actually conduct a very thorough review of the drawings and the project manual. You literally see that the first 7 steps are just review. Make sure that you do the due diligence before you get involved in any time consuming, sometimes cumbersome estimating process. And then, if possible, definitely go check out the job sites. That's very important. Be sure that you go to the pre-bid meetings and talk to the key personnel on the owner side. That'll actually give you a good understanding whether you have a nice chance, whether that's something that you could be successful at or not. And then look at the general and supplementary conditions. Again, these are going to, especially this guy and maybe sometimes that guy, is something that is going to specifically show in your estimating package as cost items. So it's very important for us to have an eye on it. Order your insurance and bonds early before you get in, because this is a time consuming task. So before it's late, make sure that you order your insurance, make sure you order your bonds and things like that. And then step 12 are dear friend, quantity takeoff. So make sure that you do quantity takeoff. Guys, that's something that I'm actually going to talk more about, and a lot about actually throughout this semester. That you're going to have a workup sheet, sort of like a scratch paper and a neat paper. So you're going to have what we call a workup sheet, where you do all your quantity takeoff and all your calculations, and the result and the outcome of those calculations is going to be transferred to something we call a summary sheet. You need to have subcontractors listed. Make sure that you ask for them to participate. Make sure you ask your subcontractors and suppliers to give you quotations for different aspects of the work. That's something that needs to be done early on, although from time to time you're not going to get timely response. And then lastly, whatever you actually are doing here is going to be systematically transferred into what we call the summary sheet. You always want to check for errors, especially using Excel and other spreadsheet. The spreadsheets are fantastic, but they're not smart, and they are not going to be self-corrected. You have to always check for errors, make sure that nothing of that nature happens. Especially for math errors and formulation errors. This is very, very common and easily happens when you're working on an estimating package. Remind me that I tell you a story about this in class, especially how easily something very simple and rudimentary can get in the way of you getting a job. Make sure that you verify all the addenda, time and place of the bid with the architect and things like that. Um, so normally you are going to have a pre-bid conference. Whoever wants to participate in that bid are welcome to meet and go to that conference. You typically look at the site access, the drainage. It's a nice, good idea to basically grab a shovel and check the soil conditions yourself, see if there are any ordinances and regulations and things like that. So basically, again, find a feel if this is a right project for you or not. Now, you also need to involve specialty or subcontractors in your estimating package and in your work as a project manager. Uh, Make sure that we see and understand the definition of subcontractor. A separate contractor hired by the prime contractor to perform certain portions of the work. So these certain portions must be accurately defined, or there's going to be overlap, there's going to be conflict, right? So that's very important. And these folks are supposed to be expert in their fields. They're supposed to reduce the risk and overhead of the prime for the prime contractor. And obviously, when you actually get them involved in the project, it's like some aspects of that work you're not going to have a significant control over. Again, I'm not saying this as a bad thing. It can be a very good thing, in fact. So, but what's important for us is to see that these two come hand in hand. So, if you reduce the risk and the overhead of a project, you're going to lose some control over that aspect of that work, which, by the way, is not going to be a bad thing. Again, one thing that's very important is that regardless of the fact that you are going to ask for subcontractors to be involved in certain aspect of the work, you must be able to still say a few things about the estimate of that piece. And the reason is twofold. First, chances are that you can't find the correct partner to bid on a certain aspect of the work. Let's say that you can't find the correct concrete contractor in that area. So you still have to have a number. You need to do estimating, right? And second, you always want to check the numbers that are coming from the subs. In fact, if they realize that they can make a better profit out of working with you, they'd be sure to give you a higher quote, right? What's your mechanism to control that, really? The mechanism for you to control all of that is really nothing but checking it yourself, doing the quantity takeoff, doing the pricing yourself, utilizing other databases like RSMeans and your past experience to do all that. So when this is done, you need to actually have all the bits processed, as you can see over there. That here is a sort of a quotation that you receive from a specialty contractor, and that's again something that we're going to practice in class. There's contact number, there's a tabulation, there's a base bid, there's some addenda and things like that that we need to be familiar with. And then finally, we're going to tabulate all that nicely in a file or in a format like this. Again, I will give you guys a nicely formulated Excel file that will do all this for you all. Well, we need to make a few adjustments to that file as needed, but the idea here is that when you have a subcontractor, you want to place their base bid right here. And if there are any adjustments, because chances are that subcontractor A and subcontractor B are not giving you a quote for the same scope of work. So you have to make a few adjustments here. Adjustment 1, 2, 3, really in order to make him apples and apples and be able to compare the two bids. Again, that's something that we're going to do, but when it comes to subcontractors, we have to have all the information coming from them very organized. You're gonna have to work with material suppliers. Make sure that you see the cost, freight, tax, delivery, and all the terms of payment for those quotations that you receive. Guys, let's get real. For an estimating package, you are going to have at least two types of sheets. One is called the workup sheet, is really where you do all your calculations, do sketches, make assumptions, apply your risk factor, do XYZ. All that is going to take place in the workup sheet. And then second, you're going to have a condensed, very nice, very summarized and concise summary sheet, which shows the cost pertaining to each and every portion, aspect, or division of that work. For example, master format divisions, you have a lot of them. In every master format division, you're going to have, in the summary sheet, you're going to have a number associated with the total cost pertaining to that. So let's look at an example of a workup sheet. As you guys can see, this is, for example, for concrete, and that's for reinforcement, to be precise, right? And you see different scopes of work, different pieces of work are listed there. All the information about dimensions on center, the number of bars, short bars, long bars, all that kind of good things. By the way, you're familiar with the terminology from estimating one, is all listed here. And then item by item, you can see the poundage, you can see the weight of reinforcement needed. What you really are going to do is that at the end of that piece, you're going to make a sum of all those weights in pounds, and that's the result that's coming from your summary sheet. Whatever that number is going to look like later on, you're going to take just that number, not all this cluttered calculation, but just the number, and you're going to transfer that into your summary sheet with some unit price. And that's all you want to do for your summary sheets, right? So keep that in mind. That's the way we're going to go about different aspects of work. Again, let me go back for a second real quick. Again, all of this, we're going to practice that. It's just a big picture. I'm giving you a snapshot of what you will see in class, right? Errors and omissions, nothing is perfect, but you always want to have a list of errors and omissions at hand, so you know what has happened. Contact the architects for clarification. Don't be shy of submitting RFIs if you don't see the clear instruction or a clear approach to doing something. It's absolutely fine to do all that. There's an insurance, by the way, that would insure you and cover especially the design for subcontractors, for any faulty workmanship and stuff like that. But it's going to be very pricey. I mean, we all know that insurance is just designed for the insurance company to make money. So be mindful of what's going on as far as that. Now, with that said, let's talk about ethics in estimating, which is an extremely important behavior that we really need to promote. We need to make sure we understand what's happening. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to take you through the canons of the American Society of Professional Estimators Code of Conduct. And we're actually going to go through all of them one by one. Many of them are common sense, they're obvious, but we're still going to state the obvious, right? So Canon 1 basically says that professional estimators shall perform services in the area of their discipline and competence. That's me. That's me right there. If you can't actually do a bench press of 2 plates on each side, don't do it, right? If you're not competent, disciplined, or ready to take on a job, just don't take it, right? That's as simple as that. But keep in mind, this is an ethical thing for all of us to do, and that comes from the within. So Canon 2, and we talked about that in the past as one of my goals, and look at that, now we're morally obliged to do this. For professional estimators, shall continue and expand, or to expand their professional capabilities. Do not stop. Keep learning, keep learning, keep learning new facilities, programs, approaches. Keep making yourself a better person. And that is something that ethically we must do. Canon 3 says that, professional estimators and those in training shall conduct themselves in a manner that will promote cooperation and good relations. Basically, have great collaboration with others, with the other partners, with folks around you. Well, this isn't that, well, ethically, this is a great attitude, a great way to live. But not only that, for folks who are going to stick to this canon, they're going to get a lot of jobs. I mean, you and I know that at the end of the day, who you know, the networking that you're capable of making, and things like that is going to speak greatly about your success. So keep that in mind. For Canon 4, is confidentiality. Is basically saying that ethically you are going to make sure that everything that comes from the owner would be kept confident with you. You have to keep in confidence all the knowledge, the business affairs and technical procedures of those who employ, of those who hire you, right? So that's an extremely important thing. Canon 5 is basically saying that you can't violate the law. Again, common sense, but ethically now. We sort of promise that we never want to violate the laws of the United States, right? And then Canon 6 is promoting being detail oriented and accurate in everything that we do as far as estimating. So all the assignments, all the packages that we put together must be as detailed and accurate as we can make them be, right? So again, that's something, I keep saying this, but one more time, these are the ethical responsibilities that we have to take on as professional estimators, as those who are in this field. Very important. And Canon 7 is talking about bid peddling. This might be a new notion to you guys, but let's look at the definition, and let me actually put a little asterisk here. And so these are the types of things that you'll see in your midterm and in quizzes and things of that nature. So be sure that you understand and see what's going on here. Bid peddling occurs when a subcontractor approaches a general contractor with the intent of voluntarily lowering the original price below what's established on the what is established on the bid day. Right, so it basically means that the subcontractor will reach out to a general contractor and they say, "Hey, what do you have as the final quotation or final price for the mechanical section?" Right, and the owner and the general contractor says 2 million, and the sub can actually go back and say, "Hey, I'll do this for 1.9," and this is happening after the price is established on the bid day. This is unethical to do. So this action basically means that the subcontractor, in their original price, they had nuggets. For whatever reason, their initial work was incorrect. I don't know about you guys, but I won't like to work with those who are not accurate and credible in the first place. So that's bid peddling. And another thing I'm going to talk about is called bid rigging, and this one is interesting. This one happens when all the general contractors, as an act of conspiracy, were going to decide that they are going to raise fictitiously for no good reason. They're all going to raise their price. So let's say, for instance, the project is about $10 million, right? And the owner opens the bid, and 5 general contractors participate. They all came up with a price of, let's say, between $9 to $11 million, but they all convene and decide that, you know what, let's just arbitrarily add another $5 million to our price, right? So whatever we have now, we're going to scale it up to a raised value for no good reason. That's called bid rigging, unethical, actually illegal, a violation of this code of ethics, and even I think violation of law too. So it's very important for us to at least be familiar with what bid rigging means and stay away from it. Bribery is Canon 9, definitely forbidden. Uh, Bad thing to do. We all know this, but at the end of the day, you have to be prepared for for occasions where you are going to, be in a situation where you are offered a bribe, right? And it's not always easy to reject those. Again, have that at the back of your mind. And make sure that you work on yourself. Make sure that you see the difference between small gifts and the real act of bribery. Not always clear. Let me give you an example. If you're, let's say that you're an owner's rep, and a general contractor actually want to take you to lunch. Is that considered bribery? Probably not. Probably yes. They're going to give you a pricey gift. Is that a bribery? Maybe yes, maybe no. Well, my point is that that line is not quite clear, and it's not easy for our brain to deceive us and make us feel like, no, this isn't bribery. This is just a simple act of, a kindness that's coming from some other party. Make sure that you talk about this to your boss, to whoever is in charge. This is a tricky business. I'm talking about bribery. Well, let me also talk about bid shopping, and this is a good one. We really need to know. So bid shopping is when a general contractor shares one subcontractor's bid with others, right? So let's say that as a general contractor, you have the lowest bid for a certain portion of the work for 1 million, right? And then you reach out to other subcontractors and you attempt to lower their bid based on what you already have. This is called bid shopping. Sort of taking a number and shop it around and see if you can get a better number. Guys, this is unethical, and believe it or not, there's a study showing that 6 out of every 10 respondents thought that this is unethical behavior, but it's not going to save any money for the owner at the end of the day. And the reason is that, honestly, at the end of the day, as a subcontractor may say yes to that offer and say, hey, yeah, sure, I am going to meet or lower my price below the level of whatever that the GC already has. But at the end of the day, you guys know that we all know how to make money. They can come up with new change orders. They can come up with new mechanisms to really earn what they deserve to earn at the first place. So this entire thing is unethical. Let's not do that. And if a general contractor is notorious for doing bid shopping, really no one wants to work with them. No one wants to work with them. Actually, I know a lot of true stories from subcontractors where there's a bid shopper. They actually give them fictitiously high quotations and they never win a work. They never win a job. Why? Because no one wants to work with them. That's very crucial, very important. Let's also talk about nuggets in the estimate. Nuggets are really, the definition is pockets of money in your estimating package that are unnecessary. Let me give you an example. Let's say that you ask every subcontractor at your work to have a line of cost to clean the job site, right? Well, by definition, then, and assuming that you don't self-perform any, at the end of the day, because every subcontractor is really mandated to clean after themselves, the job site must be clean. Now, let's say that you decide on top of that cleaning item in every quotation from subs you decide to add another cleaning at your own budget, what is going to happen? There's going to be a slight nugget in there, right? And folks, I mean, this happens. You might have heard of it happening in your surrounding, but this is a real deal. Any unnecessary additional line items to inflate the budget are called nuggets. I want to stay away from them. Now, with all that said, let me pose a few ethical dilemmas to you and try to see if we can come up with some good answer for them. So after competitive bids are received, should the general contractor attempt to make a buy? Now, before we talk about this, we need to understand what making a buy means. So the GC requests an arbitrary bid reduction from subs after the subcontractors are verbally informed. So let's say, for example, that every subcontractor, you win a job as a GC and every subcontractor is now verbally informed about that. And let's say that such and such tasks budget is 2 million, but you reach out to your sub and say, hey, can you give me a discount of 2%, right? And that's making a buy. And the answer is no, it's unethical. And asking the subs for money will actually send bad signals to the subs that you're not going to treat them fairly throughout this project, first of all. And then second of all is that, quite frankly, the owner is going to pay for that discount that you're asking from your subs. Because like I said, we are all smart people. We know how to make money. We will make money no matter what. So the sub is going to come up with change orders. They're going to fill that gap, right? Now, let's look at that from the perspective of a bunch of numbers. Let's say that the subcontractor submits a bid for 1 million, right? Out of that 1,900,000 is going to be direct cost, 50 is indirect cost, and $50,000 is their profit, right? Now, if GC makes an attempt of 1% buy, let's see how much that is going to affect the profit of the subcontractor, right? All right, so 1% of 1 million is going to be $10,000. When you look at the breakdown of the 1 million, you readily understand that the direct cost cannot be affected. That's really the cost of material, labor, and stuff like that. That's the cost that you are putting in there. So that $10,000 cannot come out of the 900 direct costs. Indirect costs, similar. So it's not too hard to argue that all of this $10,000 is going to come out of the subcontractor's pocket as profit. So now they're going to make $40,000 of profit. And if you want to calculate the relative change of that, you realize that only 1% making a buy is going to reduce the profit of the subcontractor by 20%. Guys, 20% is a large number. So as a subcontractor, don't get fooled by the idea that, come on, man, 1% is nothing. No, 1% in your bid package as a subcontractor is going to be a lot. It's going to manifest itself in the profit quite heavily. Now let's look at another example. Suppose that a total amount of 50 million, 90% of which is subcontracted. So you're looking at a project that's sort of relatively large. It's a $50 million project. 90% of it is subcontract, and the initial profit of the general contractor is 3%. Now they make a decision to request for a buy of 1% from the subs. Let's now evaluate how much that is going to affect the GC's profit, right? All right, so $50 million, 3% of it is $1.5 million. That's the initial profit that the GC will make, right? If they make a buy for 1% from every subcontractor, and 90% of the job is subbed out, so 45 million is really 90% of the 50, right? So that's the 90%, the subcontracted for a portion of the work. If they ask for a buy of 1%, that's 450 grand, right? Which directly is going to be added to the GC's profit. So now the new profit is going to be 1.95 million. It's an extra 30% profit that the general contractor can make. Again, we're not going to be naive enough to look at that 1% and say, hey, 90% is nothing. If someone argues that, stop them and show them calculations of this sort. Not true. 1% of all the subcontractors' cost is going to be a lot of profit for the general contractor. So that's unethical, and I just showed you it's not negligible either. So let me quickly review what we just went over. You're going to have a notebook for your estimating work. There's going to be workup sheets, summary sheets, errors and omissions sheet, and stuff like that. It's very important to maintain up-to-date, neat, and organized notebook package. And honestly, it's because you can then quickly and effectively answer all the estimate related questions. This is not trivial, guys, and we will see. We will work on that, and we'll see why this isn't a trivial task. A number of determinants for a bid, no bid decision: type of construction, location, size of the project, bonding capacity, things like that. Should an estimator visit the physical project location? Of course, because then you can actually get a feel for the site access, availability of the utilities, drainage, type of soil, stuff like that. It's very important. We talked about subcontractors. It's a separate contract that's hired by a prime contractor to perform a certain portion of the work. They are experts, and they are actually going to be in the project to reduce the risk for the prime contractor. But it is still very, very important for us to basically review the subcontractor's work and make sure that you redo some of the estimate they do for reasons that you see there. We talked about bid shopping. It's unethical. It really destroys the trust between subs and the prime. Not a good idea. We talked about two primary estimating sheets, being workup sheet and summary sheet. We talked about bid rigging, and we said that it's a agreement by companies to really fictitiously raise their competitive bid, and that'll affect the competition really in the bidding process. We talked about making a buy, and we said, first of all, it's unethical, and second of all, it's not negligible. So 1%, 0.5% can turn out a lot on